Welcome to the Superstar Communicator podcast. My name is Susan Heaton-Wright, a leading impact, speaking and communications expert. My aim is to show you how to make an impact so you will be heard, listened to and respected for career success. Listen weekly to the podcast and go to our website, superstarcommunicator.com. Hello everybody, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from Superstar Communicator. I am delighted that you have tuned in today to listen to the latest episode of the Superstar Communicator podcast. As you know, this podcast is all about spoken communication and how we can make an impact, raise our credibility in business, in our careers, but also in our personal lives. I know that recently you loved one of the guests that I had, and it was Andy Lopata, and he was talking about his book on leadership and networking. Now, just for you all, he's back on the other end of the internet talking about his new book. So welcome, Andy.
Thanks for inviting me back so soon, Susan.
Well, you know, I love having fantastic guests and I love supporting amazing people. And I would put you in that category.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support.
Now, your book is called Just Ask. And I received it today. I've just been looking through the contents. Can you tell us a little bit about the background to this?
Yeah, sure. So it goes back about 5 years and to a community that we both know and love, which is the Professional Speaking Association. And my business was really struggling at the time. And we got to the point on this journey at that time where we were within about £400 of our overdraft limit with no scope for any more. So we were really on the edge. Yeah. And I went to a few PSA meetings around that time. And as you know, people within the PSA are very close to each other, particularly the longer you're a member. I've been a member since 2003. We call it our tribe. And we're there for each other. And I was going to these meetings and people were saying, how's business? And of course I was answering, it's great.
It's great.
Yeah. And it wasn't. And, there's a lot more to the story, but which I share in the book and as I open it. But basically I recognized that if I couldn't even share in that space, then what hope was there for me? And I consider myself quite open. So if I wasn't being open about where I was at, what about other people? So I set myself the goal of turning the business around with the help of other people and speaking at the PSA convention when I had achieved that turnaround, because you always want a happy ending, and encouraging everyone else to look at their own approach and mindset to this vulnerability, to being honest about where we're at, and to turn it around. And in the time between me making that commitment to myself and delivering that talk, which I did in 2016, someone I knew passed away, someone I knew through networking. And after the memorial service at which so many people stood up and talked about his generosity and how he was always there for other people and never talked about himself, I found out that he'd taken his own life.
Oh, no.
And he'd done it because of money trouble. And it just reinforced everything that I sort of the journey I was on. So I delivered the talk in 2016. I talked about Richard at the end of that presentation. Some people in the room knew him.
Yes.
And then so many people came up to me afterwards and said, I think one member from one region had emailed everyone in his region to say, after Andy's talk, I need to share this with you. And there were so many responses like that I realized that the journey didn't finish there. And so the latest step has just been taken with the publication of the new book.
Well, congratulations on the new book. I know how hard you've worked on it.
Yeah, it's been a long journey.
I find asking a very, very interesting topic. I don't know about you, but I was brought up not to ask for things.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a generational thing, but certainly I can think of key moments when I've been told off by parents or a tutor at college, you know, influential people. You shouldn't ask. No, you mustn't ask. How do you feel about that?
I think there are a number of environmental factors that go
Yeah.
into our inability to ask for help. You know, a section of the book, I look at all the differences between us. So you've got generational differences. There's a
Yes.
chapter on that. There's a chapter on cultural differences.
Yes.
So you look at a society, a very patriarchal society like India, for example. I talked to two very senior Indian businesswomen, and you know there are very, very strong factors at play there. And you look at there's a chapter on gender differences, for
Yes.
example. So all these things come into play into what prevents us from asking for help. I think in terms of what our parents said, that may be one thing. I think what society says is even stronger.
Yes.
And society has traditionally said, you've got to know the answers. You know, this is what we're told in school. You know, education, and I don't know how much it's changed now, but in my day, you know, you were supposed to know the answer. We weren't taught about research until a very late stage of education. You know,
Yes.
and this is effectively asking for help is research at a basic degree. And we weren't taught about that. You were just expected to read the book yourself and know and not ask people. So there's all these different factors that come into it, and society conditions us to appear strong, to appear independent of thought, to show that we know the answer. I gave a talk on this topic last week to a Europe-wide, or actually global audience of expats around the world, and people were saying there. A couple of people came in very early and said one of them worked for a law firm and said in her law firm, you know, you are expected to know the answer. You
Yes.
do not ask for help. So it's still out there, but it's changing. You know, you see the number of celebrity stories about suicide attempts and depression and various challenges. You see Prince William and Prince Harry's campaigns, and you can see that there is a shift in society, but it's taking a while.
Really, really interesting that you, in particular, you're focusing on mental health. For the last 3 years, I have included in some of the workshops and talks I've done about asking for opportunities.
Mm.
And certainly I can think back to key moments in my life, where it was almost, you know, sliding doors moment, that because I asked, a completely new world opened up for me. And yet people professionally are sometimes reluctant to ask for opportunities. What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, and I think I should be clear. It's a really interesting book because, you know, you're taught from a marketing perspective, you should be able to pigeonhole your book to a niche audience to a large degree. This is really tough because the natural extension of the work I've done to date, which is on networking, professional relationships, referral strategies. My third book was called How to Sell Through Networking and Referrals, was a subtitle. The natural extension is asking for opportunities. You say that I focus on mental health. That's almost a natural progression of the work I was doing because
Right.
of Richard's decision to take his own life, because of the
Yes.
stories that I uncovered and I shared in the book. It wasn't a conscious decision to focus on mental health. I mean, we're now supporting a mental health charity, My Black Dog,
Yes,
through
I
the book.
noticed that at the end.
So it's there, but actually the natural extension of my work is what you're talking about,
Yes.
asking for opportunities. And Just Ask is about all of it. It's about asking for help, whether you're saying, I don't quite know how to finish this project, or I need a referral,
Yes.
or whether it's, you know, I'm at my wit's end, I don't know what to do, I'm going to take my own life. You know, so it's the whole range. It's understanding what prevents us. But, you know, at that very basic level of, you know, we are surrounded by people who would love to help us if they had the opportunity, who would take joy and pleasure in helping us, and yet we don't ask. And by presenting, it's not even just not asking, by presenting this mask, um, this face of success and strength to the world, people don't think we need help. So one of the stories I share is that when I was at the beginning of this journey, where I realized I wasn't being vulnerable, I bumped into another fellow PSA member, Derry Llewellyn Davis, in London. And Derry said to me, "How's business?" And I found myself saying, "Actually, it's pretty bad at the moment." He was like, "Oh, really? How can I help?" And Derry gave me 2 referrals in the next 2 weeks. And I asked him about this sometime later. I said, "You'd never referred me before." He said, I never thought you needed it."
Yes.
It's just as simple as that.
People can't mind read you, can they?
No, they can't. And so there's 2 elements to that. There's the element of, if we present a mask of ourselves to the world that says that we're absolutely, flying, they don't look to support us because they don't think we need it.
Yeah.
And the second is, if we're not clear about the help we need, not just that we need help, but the help we need, then it's much harder for people to support us. And one of the things I've always said in the referrals perspective, and it rolls over into this work, is your job is to make it as easy as possible for people to help you. If you make it easy for people to help you, and they're people with whom you have an established relationships, they want to help you, they will get pleasure from doing so. But that means you have to paint a picture of the help and support that you need, and you have to push your pride out of the way sometimes to do that.
A really, really good point. And I think that this could be one of the key points from this podcast, if I'm honest. But what happens when there is somebody that is always asking for help, always asking for money, always asking for referrals, sort of flipping things over to the other side? We do know people like that. How would you counsel us to manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't use a broad brush approach of always asking for help or never asking for help. I think, like everything, there's shades of grey, nuances within it. So it may be someone who asks regularly, but we know equally that we can ask them. So you end up with a really strong reciprocal relationship. Now it's up to us to ask for that help for them, and they may be offering. But let's say it's you that's always doing the asking. I think you have to have an instinct of when you've got to stop, and not push too hard, and just easy things to ask for, but then pull back a little bit and seek to support and show an interest in that other person. So there is that element. If someone is always asking you for help, and I think for me, you've got to know whether even if it's not necessary at the moment, whether in theory it could be both ways. Are they willing to reciprocate? Are they interested in you? Are they looking, or are they just leeching? And that, to me, is where any decisions are made on how strong that relationship is and how you want to push it forward. To me, if I can help people that I like, and I know that help is appreciated, and I know that help is listens to with respect, and acted on with commitment. They might not necessarily take my advice if it's advice they're seeking, but they would weigh it up and take it seriously.
Yes.
If they make me feel valued by feeding back to me and showing their appreciation, then I don't think I would have a problem with it. I think it's when people ask for your help, don't say thank you, don't update you, don't act on it, and then come back again and then again and never show any sign of an interest in you. That's where relationships fall down.
That's a really, really interesting point. For the person asking, it's not exclusively asking for the support or the referral or whatever it is that they want. It's a whole way of behaving.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll put my hands up. There are times when I felt that I may have asked too much of someone, and if I felt that instinctively, I've backed off.
Yes.
And it's recognizing that you don't always have a balanced relationship. So some people might be in a better position to help you than you are to them, or
Yes.
that's their perception. They don't, you have an imbalance of perception. So you see how they can help you. They don't think that way about you, whether you could or not. So I think that you do have to look at individual relationships. The intent has to be pure, and you have to sort of feel, okay, maybe they're not getting it. They're not feeling my appreciation. They're not asking me for anything. They're not letting me in. Maybe I need to back off. So I think that you need to listen to your gut on this stuff as well.
And do you think it's worthwhile saying, when somebody's been very generous to you, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do? Is there somebody I can recommend you to?
Yes, and sometimes you might have to push that harder with than others. But yeah, always make it known that you are happy to help the other person. One of the things I do is, and it's a natural thing I do. I mean, one of the difficulties about what I teach is that I'm analysing what works and then teaching it, which makes it almost mechanical when it should be natural.
Yes.
But one of the things that I do that works well is I'm always looking to make connections, and send articles of interest and so on, and show I'm thinking of someone anyway. So I naturally connect people. So, but what I'll do is I won't force a connection with someone. I will message them and say, I've met this person. I think they're interesting for you. Would you like an introduction? And then I'll respect their response. So I think you can actually be proactive about seeking opportunities, but at other times say, look, and if there's what is it you need?
Yes.
And that language there, I caught myself because I was saying, if there's anything I can do for you, people just say, yeah, okay, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
Be
yes.
more direct. What is it I can help you with? Put people on the spot a little bit, and then you'll get a much stronger answer.
Really, really good point. The use of language, it's very subtle, isn't it?
It is. And actually, I caught myself, and I'm asking myself, are there people where I could go back and be that bit more direct with them? Because I know the purity of my intent, if you like.
Yes.
And I like to think that they would know, but am I making a dangerous assumption there?
Yes. It's going into they can mind read
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can't mind read. We can assume, but we're putting our own thoughts on with that. Now, a number of my listeners are people that are emerging leaders, so they're moving into senior roles. And I often say to people that it's worthwhile asking the question, could I have 15 minutes of your time just to see some recommendations of things I could do?
Yeah.
How would you approach it? It would be very interesting.
I think you've pretty much nailed it there. Asking for 15 minutes of their time shows it wouldn't be a huge burden, and you'd respect the time that they offer. Explain what you're seeking to achieve. Again, something that when you strip it down and share it sounds a little bit manipulative, but done in the right way, it isn't. It is flattery. Look, I want to achieve this. I really respect what you've achieved. And I would love to get some of your insights. Could you spare me 15 minutes? Always be prepared with a follow-up ask if they haven't got that 15 minutes. So if you ask big and then settle for slightly less, you get something. Yes. So, for example, I approached a very well-known, very successful international author and speaker to mentor me. And he just didn't have time. He said, but come on my course. And he mentors me anyway now. He just doesn't realize it. It was like, I know I can ask him. But you could say, for example, could I have 15 minutes of your time to pick your brains? Well, I haven't really got much time at the moment. Well, okay. Well, if I sent you 3 or 4 questions,
yes,
would you answer? And then keep them updated afterwards on your progress. So make them part of that journey. It goes down to that appreciation I talked about. Don't just pick their brains and run away with it. You're going to pick people's brains, show that you appreciate and value it by showing them how you apply what they've said and the success it brings to you. And the more you do that, the more people will feel good about helping you and want to repeat the pleasure that made them feel, repeat the action that made them feel good.
You know, everybody, I think that that's another key gem from this podcast interview, that the people that you ask, they're part of your journey. They're part of your either business or personal journey.
And I know, I'm trying to think who it was. I mean, I wouldn't repeat it here anyway, but someone in the last week had a big success with something. And I know it came from my suggestion or my advice, something. I can't remember the exact story, but I noticed they didn't acknowledge that. And I wasn't looking for public praise or anything like that.
No.
But thanks, Andy. That really helped. Would have made me feel good.
Yes.
And it's those missed opportunities. You know, that damaged relationships mean people are less likely or more likely to help you in future, and you know, and elevate your network. So just be conscious, be mindful about the role other people play in your journey.
That's a really, really good point. I mean, certainly, and I hope that I've never missed you off anything, but I do acknowledge people when things are and tag them in posts, not because I want more likes, but actually because I want them to have the spotlight on them.
That's it. And I think that's the balance, because some people tag others in social media posts because they want to get that person's networks to see their post as well. And I find that disrespectful into the extreme. I hate it. Absolutely loathe it. It's happened to me again this morning, and it's just so disrespectful. You know, and I've had people say to me about, look, I'll tag me in a post about it, and I don't do it. You know, even if they've asked me, unless it's directly relevant to them, because it's not a good, healthy precedent to set. But if it's specifically related to something they've said or done, and you're sharing that and shining a spotlight on them for that, then absolutely, that's a good form of appreciation.
Good. Glad I'm getting something right. So
I've never had a complaint about you tagging me, don't worry.
Well, I like to hope that if I did overstep the mark, we know each other well enough that you'd be able to contact me and say, hey.
Well, here's the interesting thing. So I would like to think that as well. I do get annoyed when people do it, because apart from anything, my notifications on whichever side it is get congested with stuff that's nothing to do with me, and it's sucking my time and energy. And if people asked, that might be different, but it's just, I'll throw Andy's name in because he's got a network, you know, and so forth. But I normally don't say anything. I remove the tag.
Yes, me too.
A bit passive aggressive, but I just don't need the confrontation.
No.
And it happened with someone recently, and they'd done it before a few times, and it's someone I'd helped in their career. So I posted underneath it, and I posted a video of me speaking at the Ambition Broxbourne conference that I know you're aware of.
Yes.
Where there's a little clip of me saying, don't tag people in posts that have nothing to do with them. And it was removed within 2 minutes, and I was unfriended.
Oh, I didn't like the unfriended bit.
No, they removed me as a connection on LinkedIn. And I was red with rage, because this is someone I had referred and given a lot of support to in their career. And I sent a very angry message on Facebook, and it got ignored for a while. Then she came back to me the next day, full of apology, saying it was her VA who did it. You have to be careful if you outsource your social media, because that did a lot of damage to our relationship. And this is the problem. It's we're going off a bit, because your initial suggestion was absolutely fine. Because you were about tagging people to put the spotlight on them for something they've done, which is absolutely fine. But I think while we're on this topic of tagging people without, about you, A, think about how you do it, and B, think about how you respond when they're not happy with it, because and if you outsource, you think carefully about the outlines, because that really damaged our relationship.
And that's a shame. I hope it's been resolved now.
Yes, I mean, she was very apologetic, but of course, at some level, there's an element of the trusted relationship that's been chipped away at.
Yes.
You know, as wonderful a person as I could try to be, I'm human, and that's going to be
Of
only
course
natural.
you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it really gets back to the core of this particular book, that we are human beings,
Yeah.
and a lot of our visibility now, because we're still in this lockdown situation as we speak, is virtual, and we can assume that there is that we're almost two-dimensional with that, but we are three-dimensional. We're human beings, and any connection is a human connection, not just a name on a list on LinkedIn.
Yeah, completely. And I think that is one of the downsides of social media, is that you dehumanize the people on the other end of a profile. And you see it in a lot of the connection requests, you know, the spammy approaches, the number crunching and so on. They forget there's a human being there and there's time involved in engagement. You know, it amazes me when someone I've never met before, and I don't want to sound arrogant saying this, because this is, it amazes me for absolutely anyone. You know, they'll send a connection request to a complete stranger. You reply and say, well, tell me why you want to connect. And they'll say, well, let's have a phone call.
Yeah.
I'm just baffled. You know, as lovely as it is, but how many are you sending out? How many phone calls are you having? And
Yeah.
are you actually doing any work? And I know I'm worried that sounds incredibly arrogant.
No, not at all.
But yeah, it just bemuses me, and it's just, there's no respect for other people's time. I wonder about your own time. You know, it's a mud at the wall approach, because yes, every phone call you have could lead to work and it could lead to opportunities, but there has to be some filter there.
Yeah. Which gets us to another part of our podcast interview, and that is sharing 3 top tips for asking.
Okay, well, there's 10 at the back of the book.
I haven't got that far yet.
But what I think, actually, I'll tell you how I'm going to answer this. So when I wrote the book, I mentioned it's been a long journey. This book has been 3 years in writing. And 4 drafts. I did not get it right the first 3 times. Hopefully I've got it right the 4th.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
But I had rewritten it, I'd restructured it, and nothing was working. And I was stuck, completely stuck. It was, I'm trying to think, it was maybe very early this year or late last year, around this time last year. I was really stuck. I didn't know where to go with this book. And the structure wasn't working at all. And I went to bed one night. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was last Christmas, because it was when I put it down to my body just stopping, my mind stopping the day to day, and just letting the space for other stuff to come in. And I'm pretty sure now I think about it, I went down to see friends before Christmas in Devon, and it was that the night before I went or something like that, and I just switched off. I think I switched off from work. And I dreamt, and the dream I had was that I was rewriting the book with 2 of our fellow speaking friends, Simon Hazeldine and Chantal Cornelius. I'm not even sure if I've told Simon and Chantal this story.
No.
And by the way, Simon and Chantal have had no input into this book other than in my dream. And they are brilliant at what they do, but they're not relevant to this topic. In terms of their expertise. Why it was them, I have no idea. But anyway, so I dreamt that Simon, Chantal and I were rewriting the book, and one of us was writing one section, I'll come to what they were in a second. One of us was writing another, and one of us was writing the third. And I woke up and I went, that's it. That's the structure of the book, these 3 sections. I got up and I wrote the 3 sections down. And then I went back to bed thinking, right, it's out of my head now, I can go to sleep. Of course I didn't. Spent the next 4 hours or 5 hours from 3 o'clock in the morning writing out a whole chapter list and structure of the book and so on. And I restructured the whole book that night. And the 3 sections were this. And so these are your 3 tips. So, and you'll see there's 6 sections in the book because we've recognized there's other things that didn't fit that pattern that were in there. But this is the core of the book and the core of the approach. So the first section and the first tip was about having the courage to ask. So in the book, I explore what stops us, what holds us back. So my first tip is to understand what's holding you back from asking why you're not doing it and address that.
Yeah.
And addressing it means either understanding what's holding you back and why it's not rational and getting past the fears or the I mean, I'll give you an idea. The desire to look good is probably number one. So getting past that, or recognize that it is a real challenge and find a way, to address it so that you can ask for help.
Yeah.
So finding the courage is number one. The second section in the dream was a strategy. Actually having a strategy for asking for help. So understand what you want to ask for. What do you need support in your career, in your role, in your business, in your life, whatever it might be? Where is it that you're struggling? What's you talked about mental health earlier. What's affecting your mental health? What is it that's holding you back from getting that promotion that you want? Where's that gap to make that next step up the career ladder? Whatever it might be, what do you need help with? And who's best placed to help you? Whether it's because of their experience and expertise or whether it's because of your relationship with them. The message of the book isn't go and ask everyone for help, go out in the street and say, help me. It's about having a trusted network of people that you can turn to. So where do you want that help to come from? What help do you want? Where do you want it to come from? And then the third section of the book, so the third tip, is to actually put it into action.
Yes.
So have the courage to face it, understand what support you want, and then implement it. And I think a key tip in this section, I interviewed, again, someone you may know, Billy Schwer, the former world champion boxer, and I shared Billy's story. He used to live just up the road from you in Luton, which is why, and PSA member, which is why I thought you might know him. But Billy was world champion, went off the rails, world champion boxer, went off the rails and then rebuilt his life. He after he lost his title, he just lost 2 years of his life, then rebuilt it. But I share his story in the book, but I also, I was fascinated by the role of the corner in boxing, because we think of boxing as an individual sport. We laud the champions as individuals, yet they are made up of teams. They have their corner, their trainer, their coaches, and so on. And I thought that was a really good metaphor for life. And the message I've got, that you ultimately implement stuff, but you have a team behind you. And Billy said to me, I asked him about the role of the team, of the corner, and he said that they can analyze your opponent, they can come up with a game plan, they can get you fit, they can get you ready to fight, they can see what's happening during the fight, they can reinvigorate you, re-energize you, refocus you between rounds. But when the bell goes, it's just you with someone trying to punch your lights out. And he said, you have to take responsibility. And I think that made that metaphor even stronger. That you should have your corner, your team, the people giving you the advice, giving you the support that you need. But ultimately, the decisions you make are your responsibility, no one else's.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to implement them as well. So those would be my 3 tips: would be understand what's holding you back and where you find the courage to ask for help. Put a strategy in place, be mindful about it in the way you approach it, and then take responsibility for taking action.
Brilliant. Absolutely superb. I know that everybody listening to this will be writing notes. I can visualize some of them now, because some of my listeners say that they take notes from everything, but it is transcribed as well for those people who are hard of hearing, because this is something that we've started implementing now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Is there anything else that you would like to add? How can people order your book?
They can order the book in all the normal ways. It's on Amazon. It's on, I think there's a new independent retailer competitor to Amazon. I think it's bookstore.co.uk in the UK. Waterstone Smith, you can order it from all of them.
Yes.
And you could go into your local independent bookshop if you're in the right tier, and ask them to order it in for you if they don't stock it. So yeah, it's in all the usual places. It's currently available on paperback and Kindle, or e-reader, and it will be available in audiobook very early in the new year, hopefully January the 1st.
Fantastic. So thank you. And how can people contact you if they want to ask you something, or see if you can work with them?
Well, the beauty of my name is that I'm pretty easy to find.
Yes.
So it's Andy Lopata, Lopata, on all the usual social media channels. You'll find me. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, please personalize a request and say that you heard me on this podcast. Then I'll be happy to accept. But Instagram, you've got Andy Lopata. There's also connecting is not enough on Instagram, and Twitter is just Andy Lopata. Facebook /networking strategy will be my page on Facebook as well.
Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks ever so much, Andy. It has been the most fantastic interview again. And I know that I'm going to take away lots of new things to consider, but I'm sure that for the listeners, you will also take a lot on board. So thank you so much, Andy.
It's my pleasure. Thank you again for inviting me back on so quickly and giving me this opportunity to talk about the new book.
Brilliant. So thank you very much, listeners. Remember that you can get this particular podcast on all of the main platforms. And I would really, really appreciate some referrals and recommendations. So if you feel that you would like to recommend this particular podcast, don't forget that you can write a short recommendation. So until next time, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from Superstar Communicator. You have been listening to the Superstar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes and on apps. Please contact us if you want to discuss any topic, could suggest a topic for us to include, or a guest who could come onto the podcast. Go to superstarcommunicator.com.